Welcome back to episode 18 of the Two Commoners podcast. We are back with another special episode revolving around the great matchup that everyone in America is looking forward to. I know you just can't hold back your excitement because it's something we've been waiting for forever. Joe Biden versus Donald Trump no, just kidding. Cutting it off there.
It's not on pay-per-view?
Nope, not on pay-per-view.
We're not televising
I would
shit?
buy it if it was on pay-per-view. Bare knuckle boxing between Joe Biden.
Dude, could you imagine if the two of them had, like, a fight? Like, an actual fight?
Yeah.
Who do you think would win? Like, a real fight? Like, this is nothing to do with politics. This is about strength.
Biden. I bet he's quicker. Speed kills, man.
I don't know. Supposedly Trump takes Sudafed apparently.
What's that?
A stimulant.
Oh.
It's actually the stimulant that people use to synthesize into meth. So people will go around and.
So Donald's on meth.
No. I mean, if you want to play that game, then everybody on ADD medication is on meth.
Seems like it. Just kidding.
But
Just kidding. Sarcasm. Sorry, didn't mean to offend anyone who has ADD. My bad.
Or is on meth.
Or is on. Those are the people north of Highway 8.
Okay, dude.
What?
Just the Highway 8 jokes. I thought I'd be done with that shit when I left Jimmy John's.
Why?
Because
you still live in Richmond, Wisconsin.
I mean, everybody was making that. I never heard the Highway 8 jokes until I went to Jimmy John's.
Really?
Actually, that's not true because I remember one of our friends' cabins was north of Highway 8. So me and the boys, I remember Jesse would always be like, "We're north of the Highway 8, boys. Anything can happen." Get all weird about it.
It's true. Just like anything can happen with this election coming up.
Yeah.
Wow, am I excited.
You sound like it, Hunter. Tell us why you're so excited.
Just two prime candidates. Nice, young candidates with great views.
Young, dude. They are the youngest people I've ever seen.
Yep.
Just, man.
It's such a shame. Why are we here?
Well,
I don't know.
So we have the oldest president against the...
Soon to be oldest... Well...
Ooh.
Ooh, soon to be oldest president. Let's finish it out.
Yeah, soon to be oldest president. Yeah. Do you know, like the soon to be first woman president of the United States?
Yeah.
It's funny how that worked out.
Yeah, well, that's Hillary Clinton. So.
Do you think she'll go down in history as the worst candidate ever?
No.
What do you think that is?
Because she wasn't the worst candidate.
Okay, worst primary candidate.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. No.
Maybe. I don't know. I guess I don't know enough about past failed presidential candidates.
Yeah, I mean, Taft was pretty awful his second term. But I also don't know how people actually felt about him.
I wasn't there.
Also, like, what about like Zachary Taylor and all the lesser-known presidents? What about their opponents? I wonder if there was actually hype around these. Like, if there was some diehard Zachary Taylor fans back in the day.
How many votes do you think they got in the presidential election back then?
Back in the day, it was not very many. Like, in the early United States, it was like a few hundred and then probably a few thousand.
Yeah.
Because it was originally just landowners. I think back in, like, Jefferson's day and stuff, it was literally, like, only a couple hundred votes on each side.
Wow.
And then it probably quickly evolved into thousands of votes and then really quickly into 10,000s of votes.
Do you think Election Day should be a national holiday?
I don't know. I seem to talk to a lot of conservatives who think it shouldn't be, but whenever I ask them why, they basically just say we don't need more holidays or it'll only help the Democrats.
It's true, yeah. I think it will only help the Democrats.
I mean, yeah, but I also don't think that's a very good reason to oppose something.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, it's easy for somebody like you who's a Democrat to say it, but like, yeah, I will say this. I mean, Election Day being a national holiday, I think there's really no legitimate reason for it not to be. The whole "we don't need more holidays" argument is just kind of stupid, and I think there's a lot of things that would.
We have Labor Day as a holiday.
And you don't think we should have Labor Day?
No, we should. Just saying, like, I think they're kind of on the same level of importance.
Yeah, fun fact, Steven Crowder released a video about like shitting all over Labor Day.
Yeah.
And he got disliked, like ratioed pretty heavily by his fan base.
Really?
Yeah, this was a while ago. This was a few years ago. But he released a. It was like basically like, cause you know Steven Crowder's a comedian, right? He's not a news guy. He's a comedian, as he says so. But I mean, he mostly is. He's like the right wing to Jon Stewart, if you want to call him that.
Yeah.
He's on YouTube, but he yeah, he released this video just talking about how Labor Day was like unnecessary and how like you should be grateful that you get any day. He didn't say these things directly, but that was like the sentiment of this video. Like you should be grateful that your boss gives you what you do and you don't need anything else. And it was just this whole thing. It was like supposed to be like a joke rant, but the whole thing was just like. He also made it sound like the boss is working tirelessly at work while everybody else is home at Labor Day, which is not a thing that happened.
Yeah.
Like I just, yeah, I don't know what he was thinking with that, but it was just funny to see his own community, who's probably a lot of blue collar conservatives, just like get pretty pissed at him for that.
Yeah.
And I just bring that up because that's like the whole. Conservatives not wanting specific holidays for things that should be holidays. Like, I don't think everything should be a holiday, but, like, Election Day, like, yeah, it's important to make sure everybody can go vote. I don't like how, like, here's the thing. Like, I'm not a huge fan of how mail-in ballots are conducted. Mail-in ballots are fine, but some states like California, when they send them out to all addresses, and they're not very and they don't have a lot of scrutiny about it, it can lead to some problems. And there has been like allegations in certain areas about like the way they harvest ballots being sketchy or whatever. And we've kind of talked about this. We don't need to relive the whole argument. But the thing is if we did other things like early voting or having Election Day be a day off so everybody can get there and vote, then there'd be no reason to have like the mail-in ballots. And so yeah, I guess I kind of don't like how like there'll be a problem a little bit and conservatives will be like, no, we're winning with the way things are set up, let's not fix it at all solutions are bad. And I don't know, just pick the one that's the least bad. I don't really see any real, like, no frauds are gonna come of there being a national holiday for election. You can make that argument for mail-in ballots, but you can't really make that argument for like having the holiday. Just give them the day. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you really think voter turnout would increase that much? Like, long term, like obviously the first voting day holiday, there'd be.
Long term, yeah.
So like 10 years from now, there'd still be an increase in voter turnout before it was a holiday?
Well, whether it increases year to year, I think it would level off, but
that's the thing. If we're here right now, and it goes up here after they make it a holiday, and it slowly goes back down to here afterwards, it didn't really do much. Not saying we shouldn't make it a thing, but I'm just saying, do you think that's a possibility? Like, I think.
I don't think that's a possibility.
You don't think it would go like that?
No, unless states conduct elections like they're doing right now, like in Georgia with eliminating polling stations. People don't want to wait in long lines.
They had early voting in a lot of those polling stations, you know? In the long lines, people just all decided to vote on voting days, and they didn't have enough stuff. But they
also closed like 20 polling stations.
But there was still early voting stations around in several areas that later were plagued by long lines.
Yep, but it's election day. You should be allowed to vote in a reasonable time. Still.
I mean, yeah, bad communication and organization
Yeah.
all around between the organizers. There's a whole big finger pointing thing of who's really at fault with it, because like the people on the local level blame the people on the federal level, or not the federal level, the state level.
Mm-hmm.
People on the state level blame the people on the local level, and it seems to be a problem with the training. It seems to be one of the consensus that the federal people didn't train the local.
Who decides how many polling stations there are?
Not entirely sure. That might be the Secretary of State
Yeah.
or whatever, but there might be other like things at play.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe the Secretary of State can I guess do an action to close or open them, but maybe like there's also a set amount of funding and they don't get to basically open as many as they can. Maybe they have a X amount of funding given by like I guess state Congress or whatever the heck you want to call it.
And they're pretty quick to close them when they can.
I don't know, man. I mean, I agree. Should probably the way elections are run there should be reorganized. I'm just a little quick. I'm not trying to be too quick to assume that it's automatically nefarious because, like I said, there was plenty of early voting like areas in Georgia that were not being used or touched by like anybody for a while. And then a lot of people showed up on voting day. And maybe they should communicate that a lot better. Like, clearly there's a communication problem. I don't think anybody waiting in the line, like, didn't want to vote. Like, if they knew there was other ways to vote, it should be more clear. And I know there's problems with people's absentee ballots making it there. And they're running out of papers or voting ballots the day of, and they can't get them more. It's like a freaking piece of paper. I know it's a federal piece of paper, but is it really that hard to freaking go down to the federal printer, print some more, and like deliver them? Like maybe delivering them in a day seems difficult, but like how far away are they printing them? And also, why is there not a big warehouse of these?
Yeah, true. Oh, big warehouse with these.
Imagine if somebody broke into the
Yeah, that's the fraud you're looking for right there. So.
Well, that's the thing. How do you? That's the thing. How do you make sure you're not going to run out of ballots without having a bunch of blank ballots left over sitting around somewhere?
Well, you ensure that you have
The exact amount. There's
for registered voters, yes, and then you maybe do a little excess.
Yeah.
But not too much. Where, well, you look at the pattern, how many people usually vote, and then you can print excess from there. Like new registered voters that come on election day. That's what I'm hinting
Yeah,
at.
I don't know. It's
All
just.
Right. Should we talk about what we were supposed to talk about?
Oh, yeah. Dude, Bro, I didn't set a timer.
That's alright. We're good. We don't need one. I'm watching it.
Hunter with his eyes.
Did you see that? Okay, alright. Moving on. Pros and cons.
About what?
Donald J. Trump.
Okay.
At this day, right now.
Okay, pros and cons. Con. The pandemic kind of made him look like a neurotic bitch.
Yeah. Incompetent person.
I think Donald Trump's competency is actually a thing that has been constantly waning back and forth. The reason I say that is because he can actually be a fairly strong leader, not in unification, but rather in being a figurehead. Like I think he really does make other countries like a little bit more, and this could be obviously viewed as a bad thing, but like makes other countries a little bit more wary, fearful a little bit of the United States, a little bit, and in a way that also gets like a type of respect from certain countries though.
Yeah.
I think people think that they have to play ball a lot more with Donald Trump instead of just like walking through him. I think countries that are like laughing at him are actually a little bit scared shitless of him at the same time. Obviously, like lots of different countries, lots of different world leaders, case by case basis. But I do think that like Putin just wants you to think that Trump is right where he wants him to be. I don't even think that's necessarily the case, even though Trump has a relatively good relationship with Putin. There's still been like sanctions raised and stuff, and I think there probably is still a little bit of an ongoing battle between Trump's administration and Putin when it comes to like trade and sanctions and stuff. It's probably not at the top of the priorities right now because Trump cares more about that stuff with China, which honestly I think is probably the right move. And not only that, he has to deal with a lot of domestic stuff right now. So a lot of the stuff in which Trump, where he draws his strengths from, are kind of not what the focus needs to be right now. Because the focus is with the domestic struggle of unifying the nation to get through coronavirus and the civil unrest and making sure everything domestically is carried out correctly. Yeah. I don't think Trump is very good at the domestic policy, believe it or not. I think somehow I actually don't think he was that bad at foreign policy. Not as much as people misconstrued it. Because a lot of times whenever he'd make a misstep on foreign policy, it would somehow kind of work out for him. Like even the Iran stuff worked out for him. All the...
How?
What?
How?
The U.S. took out the guy they wanted to take out, and absolutely nothing happened to Trump or the United States. You get what I'm saying? Like, they got away with it. And I'm sure there's plenty of people in the area in the Middle East who are probably happy that they took out Soleimani. Obviously, a lot of Iranians aren't happy with it, and I understand why, but obviously I didn't know General Soleimani personally, and I've heard people say that he was fighting ISIS and he just got back after fighting ISIS and everything, but everybody was fighting ISIS. Freaking, what's his name? The guy from Assad. Assad's army was fighting ISIS. Russia was fighting ISIS. Everybody wanted ISIS out of there. Mm-hmm. Like, nobody wanted ISIS. Just because General Soleimani was fighting ISIS doesn't mean he was not a threat. And apparently he was being terroristic to a lot of our allied states and countries over there, such as, like, Jordan and Turkey and stuff like that.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that is one of the pros of Trump, but I think it is not shown through current events. He has to focus completely domestically. And when it's domestically, we're looking at Trump's tweets. And also, domestically, there's a lot of state and local parts that also have to be on the same page as Donald Trump to make it easy on him. And they're most definitely not on the same page as him. So then it becomes harder for him. And Trump doesn't do very good under pressure. So then he acts worse. And his Twitter gets more nutty. And then civil unrest gets more nutty. And he's caught in an infinite feedback loop where he's literally cannot ignore the worst thing about his like presidential instincts. He has to deal with this. These are the things he's worst at, and he has to fucking deal with them. And he can't.
Sounds like he'd be a good president for a second term.
I mean, like I said, though, it's not even completely his fault. I'm just saying he doesn't handle the situation necessarily well in a way that's in his favor. I mean, I think plenty of America's failure in handling the coronavirus crisis and everything else that has hit us has less to do with Donald Trump than most people would like you to believe. Like,
we have no national testing strategy. Still don't.
I just have a hard time believing that these problems are completely contingent on Donald Trump. So other penny pinchers who...
He wouldn't let states that didn't help him out politically get access to the federal stockpile. Michigan, for example.
Yeah, I can't really comment on that because I don't know much about that. Doesn't sound very good.
Nope. He let Mississippi, though.
I don't know, it just...
And Florida.
Trump's travel ban on China that he did, everybody kind of shouted him for early on in the virus.
They shouted him because he still let people in.
U.S. citizens that were coming back from China.
Workers, too. Workers.
people on visas.
Mhm.
It was very clear early on in the lockdown, but that's the thing. They switched their method of attack. Originally, they said it was bad that he was doing it at all. That they were locking it down. And then the virus got bad, so then they flipped it to say it wasn't enough. There's still a quote of Joe Biden that exists of him
Yeah.
saying he wouldn't do anything. And like him saying that I wouldn't have shut down the border and the travel with China. Like, I don't know. Just I based on what other politicians were saying and what Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York, was saying, like early in coronavirus, I really find it hard to believe that if it was any other president, it would be handled any better. Like the only thing that I can really say
You find that hard to believe?
that if it was another president, it would be handled much better than it is now.
Yeah.
Kinda, because
Really?
it seemed like our entire leadership was pretty blindsided by this.
Well, I mean,
If you look at what all of them were saying,
if you have someone that would just act with like their gut feeling and their pure instinct and listen to experts, then we wouldn't have had as many deaths. I mean, sure, we would have been hit hard. I'm not saying anything like that, but we would have saved a lot of lives.
I don't know. Maybe it would have been better not to have him, but I don't really know. It's hard to say, honestly.
Yeah.
Like,
Any other pros?
I just have a hard time believing Joe Biden would handle it better. That's really it. I also have a hard time believing Hillary would have handled it better.
I feel
Maybe Obama would have handled it better, but he's not the same as the other two.
Yeah. I feel like they both would have listened to Birx and Fauci better and faster. Any other pros?
He has a strong base.
Yeah.
Also, he's gaff proof, and he has meme armor.
He's gaff proof?
Donald Trump. He's gaff proof.
What do you mean he's... Oh, like people just know? What do you mean gaff proof?
If he makes a gaff,
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's what I thought.
it doesn't
Hurt.
do anything to
Because
him.
they expect it.
He's a mud monster. You're throwing more mud balls into the mud pile, and he just grows bigger.
And I think his base has weakened though.
Probably a little bit, but it's still pretty passionate and strong.
Like that Lincoln Project and Republicans voting for Biden.
These groups existed last election, though, too.
Yeah, and they supported Trump.
There was plenty of groups like that didn't support Trump. I'm sure.
But Lincoln Project is a massive organization.
All I know is there's plenty, like, maybe it's different now because we're 6 months into 2020, but I know at the beginning of 2020, after Trump gave his State of the Union, he had his highest approval ratings ever, and there was a lot of Republicans who were not very happy with Trump, who didn't vote for Trump, like, in 2016, who were, like, happy with his performance. So much has happened since then, since the State of the Union. So it might not be the same thing, but that's what I'm saying. If somehow we can get these crises, which we probably can't, to wrap up in some way that favors Trump, I think he could win. Either that or things get to a point where, because crises can help presidents.
Yeah.
So it has to go either close enough to we're at the light at the end of the tunnel and Trump starting to, like, seem confident again, kind of like at the State of the Union, or it has to go the other direction where shit is, like, hitting the fan and we can't deal with the transition of power right now, and people just unify around Trump based off of, like, fear and anxiety. Like, it seems nutty, but that shit happens. Probably wouldn't be a landslide victory if that happened. It would just have to be a majority of the country. Specifically, the states with all the electoral votes.
Yeah. You got anything else for Trump?
I don't know. He has meme armor.
Meme armor, yeah, that's a good one.
His friggin' base just makes memes about him. Anytime he does, like, I have a hard time even getting mad about the shit Trump does, because anytime he does something, he's just so fucking funny, dude. Like, it's only terrifying because he's president, but a little bit sometimes.
He's got very little African American support.
All right, we're actually going to talk about demographics now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm hard pressed to think that his 8% from 2016 is gonna go up.
It might have if the civil unrest didn't happen. In fact, I would have mostly said it would have if you asked me this like 6 months ago. But now, yeah, you're probably right. Probably no way. It's probably the same with the Mexican support and Hispanic support.
Yeah.
He also does bad with like suburban white women.
Does he do bad with them?
Yeah.
Oh, really? I know this is based on polls. Biden is winning in the older men. I think it's 50 and up.
Biden's winning in basically everything right now. In fact, I was looking at
Not white college men with no degree.
Wait, white college men with no degree, Trump's winning?
Sorry, white men with no college degree.
I was like, what?
Word salad. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I was looking at polls. One of the few, it said like on a lot of issues, like so it'd be like an issue like unifying the country, and then say where everybody polls, Biden won that one. Biden won almost all of them.
Yeah.
One of the only ones where Trump won was dealing with China, where Trump had the edge, which I think goes back to Trump actually kind of making some of the other powerful countries low-key kind of shit themselves, even if they're laughing at him.
Yeah.
I think that's like probably his best strength, and everything else, other than like, unless you want to count the meme armor and the mud monster bullshit, like everything else is pretty much a weakness.
Yeah.
So.
Should we go on to Biden?
Yeah. Well, what are your pros on Biden?
My pros is I think he can be a unifying figure.
You think he's unifying?
Yeah. Given
I don't know, man.
given that he's attached to Obama and the adversity he has faced throughout his life. Yeah.
Well, so I know his son died, and didn't his wife die at one point?
At one
I mean,
point. Jesus.
Okay, well, why is saying at one point, like...
You said at one
Yeah, I know, but why is that bad? Like, what's there to me
Like
saying his wife died and his wife died at one point?
Because
he still has a wife. He has a different wife.
I don't know, actually. I know his son died, yes.
Pretty sure his wife did die, right? Like, or a wife?
I don't know.
I swear I heard this the other day, bro. Like a car crash? Maybe I'm just full of shit.
I do not know.
Maybe I'm full of shit, guys, but... I don't know, but Bo for sure died.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bo Biden.
Yeah.
What, did he die of cancer?
Mhm.
Remember when Biden promised to cure cancer?
Every president has promised to cure cancer.
Stop promising to cure cancer, presidents. Just say, I'll give it my all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he can be a unifying figure. Your turn.
Has Trump promised to cure cancer?
Yeah. Yes, he did. It was actually right after Biden did it. It was so funny.
No doubt that motherfucker's probably...
Because he started bashing him for doing it, and then he did it.
Yeah, no doubt he's like, God damn it, he went that far, now I gotta go that far. Two can play at this game.
Your turn.
Joe Biden's pros. Even though Joe Biden gaffes a lot, the spotlight is not on him as much as Trump. Joe Biden is in a position where all he has to do is make the right commentary and make the right moves. Guess what? He doesn't have to do anything because he's not in charge of anything.
Yeah.
Like, Hillary Clinton was still under scrutiny of stuff she did when she was Secretary of State. So even though she didn't have to do anything while she was running, she was still vulnerable to that scandal because it was new.
Yeah.
Because of responsibilities she held during just the last administration. Actually, was she Secretary of State, like, even when she was running? Like, would she still have that job?
No, I don't think so. No.
When did she stop being Secretary of State?
assuming right as she announced her candidacy.
Was there a new Secretary of State?
Probably appointed one, or someone filled in.
But I mean, Trump's running for president. He's president.
Yeah.
Governor Romney was running for president. He was still governor.
I feel like cabinet positions are different, though. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. But, yeah, so Joe Biden doesn't really have to do anything. I mean, they already tried digging into the scandal and his most recent responsibility, which was the Hunter Biden thing. And I think it did hurt him a little bit, but I think there's something to be said about how quick, like, you know, about an October surprise.
Yeah, true.
Like, if the Hunter Biden thing was an October surprise, I think it could have destroyed him. But it wasn't an October surprise. It was over a year before the election. I think people were...
And it died pretty quickly.
It actually went on a decent amount of time. I almost think that it would be a bigger deal if we didn't immediately move into a pandemic, Iran drama pandemic, civil unrest, all this other stuff happening. I think that just made it so much more insignificant. Plus, like, Joe Biden buried it with other gaffes.
You think the gaffes just covered up the news story?
It happens with Trump, happens with Boris Johnson.
Like, just making a mistake in a press conference doesn't make the story just disappear.
I mean, it does in a lot of regards. Think about it. Like, you literally do, like, politicians that kind of have the stupid persona will literally, because if you do something kind of stupid and weird and insignificant, but, like, laughable, funny, memey, it'll get covered a lot.
Yeah.
More people are likely to read that. Like, Trump spelled hamburgers wrong, than read about what Trump's doing in Yemen.
But that doesn't stop Congress from doing anything, like hearings or anything like that.
Oh, I just didn't think hearings were ever going to happen. I mean, it has to get through for hearings to happen, it has to get through Nancy Pelosi and doesn't the Senate just go right to it?
Yeah.
Really?
Senate, yeah. They as much strength as the other house.
I don't know, maybe Mitch just didn't want to. I mean, there was a lot of conservatives who were, I always thought it was pretty conspiracy theory, but there's a lot of conservatives who were pretty convinced Joe Biden was gonna get tried for that stuff.
No. Anyway.
These are like people on the internet. Yeah. I don't actually know these people, but just when you read YouTube comments and you see people being like, Adam Schiff and Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi are all gonna go to jail when the hearing goes through, it's like, sure, bud.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that scandal would have been the one that would have hurt him the most, and it's already gone, it's already been used. Unless they pull another one out, but yeah. What's more likely, a Trump scandal coming out or a Biden scandal coming out?
A Trump scandal.
Yep, because he's in the spotlight and he has a job to do.
Yeah, and he has a weird history.
Yeah, so Biden's like biggest pro and benefit
is that he's
he doesn't have to do anything really. Just has to be a good commentator and say the right things. He doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah. What else you got for pros and cons?
I guess the biggest con about Biden is the fact that I know you fight me on this, but I do think his mental health decline is more obvious than Trump's, possibly worse and coming along faster. And another thing is his VP pick is like very important because a lot of people are going to look at them as the de facto president.
Yep.
So this is both a pro and a con because the VP could help him, but honestly, I think the VP is more likely to hurt him than to help him.
Really?
Well, think about it. I honestly think there's not a lot of people who would see a VP that Joe Biden would pick who wasn't on board with Biden before and be like, okay, that's it. Now I'm on board with Biden. The only VP that could maybe do that is like Bernie Sanders, but he already said he's picking a woman. And if he picks a VP that's just a bad pick, and they have a scandal or something, like if he picked Elizabeth Warren, and he just made a really bad pick, that could hurt him pretty bad.
Yeah.
Most likely his pick's going to be something like Amy Klobuchar, not matter much. But although
I don't think it's.
I don't think it is either because
Anymore.
yeah, mostly because that.
Chauvin scandal.
Did you ever find out if that whole thing was even true about Amy Klobuchar and the being able to prosecute George Floyd, his killer?
Yeah, it was because it was brought to her desk multiple times. I don't know if there was evidence to prosecute.
Because I was watching a socialist YouTuber who mentioned that, and then 2 videos later he said, "Oh, before I get into my video, I just want to get out of the way that Amy Klobuchar, I just found out that she was not in a position to do that because she moved districts or something, and I've been propagating wrong information."
Oh.
And that I'm taking his word for it, but
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine somebody wouldn't go back on something they've already said like that if they weren't sure.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
I don't know, but yeah, but that alone was enough of a reason for her not to be picked. I guess her prediction's wrong, but
Hey, crazier things have happened.
Who's the one that they're thinking of doing now?
Stacy? No.
No, it's not Stacy.
Tammy Duckworth?
No.
She'd be a good one.
I know they were kind of looking at, was it Gretchen Whitmer? But that's not the one I'm thinking of right now.
The governor of Michigan.
Yeah.
I don't hear her name.
I've heard her name a few times.
Really?
Yeah, there's a couple other people who have been kind of coming in the spotlight, but I can't remember their names. It's just too many forgettable politicians I don't already know enough about.
Yeah. Pro, I think Biden has a tough personality like Trump does.
I mean, yeah, kind of.
No? You don't think so?
I don't know. Did my yawn leave any?
You said yeah, kind of.
No, I mean, I get what you're saying. He'll be like, "Look, Jack,"
Yeah.
and like, it's a type of tough, but I don't know if that'll fight super good against Trump. Like, honestly, I have no idea how this will work. Like, it's gonna be like, "You're wrong, Joe. You're fake news," and then Joe's gonna be like, "Listen here, Jack."
I hope there's no audience.
I hope so too.
If they debate.
Do you think they'll debate?
Yeah.
Who do you think a debate would help, Trump or Biden?
I don't know.
I think it could go either way.
Yeah.
I think Trump is way less likely to gaffe in that situation. Trump has never had a bad debate.
Yeah, I don't know actually. I guess they're not really fresh in my mind.
He hasn't really debated in 4 years.
Yeah,
so
that's why.
But it hasn't. Joe Biden's already had plenty of bad debates in this election cycle. He's had a few good ones, but he's also had a couple where he did nothing. Joe Biden's had a couple debates where he literally said like 2 things the whole night, despite the fact that he's in center stage. It's fucking amazing.
I do think Joe Biden is tougher than Hillary is to debate.
Yeah, that's because Hillary would always make the most stupid moves ever. Her VP pick as Tim Kaine was a horrible pick. She picked him to win Virginia, a state she was already going to win.
Yeah.
Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah.
Also, I'm with her. What the hell is that slogan? Somebody doesn't understand anything about marketing a political movement when you pick that.
Yeah.
Freaking, who's a better outsider than the first woman? You lived in the White House throughout most of the 90s.
True.
Like, don't market your... Here's the thing. She always had the instinct, and we can talk about whether or not you think Joe Biden would do the same thing, but one of Hillary's biggest problems is she always had the instinct to immediately deny what Donald Trump was saying. Like, Donald Trump would be like, "I'm an outsider." She's not an outsider. Hillary Clinton would be like, "Oh yeah, I'm an outsider too. I'm a bigger outsider than Donald Trump." She would immediately be like, "He's wrong. I'm that thing. I can play at his game." And she couldn't play at his game. She was terrible at it. Do you know what she should have done? "I'm experienced. He's not. He might be an outsider, but that's not necessarily a good thing."
Yeah.
You need someone, a little bit of a little bit of an insider like me who wants to bring change, like, you get what I'm saying? You can work
Yeah.
with that and kind of spin it in a more positive light.
Yeah.
Do you think Joe Biden would make the same mistakes?
I don't think so. Maybe. I don't know. I guess. In that situation, like the example you gave, if it were Joe Biden instead of Hillary, I would say no. But I guess it would depend.
I don't know. I feel like Trump, like, you might say he's not all there, but I think he's actually pretty good at playing people linguistically. Like, basically setting them up for traps. So he can, like, get a soundbite that makes him sound like a freaking alpha. And I think Joe Biden's tough, but it's more like blind punching in the dark. Like, he'll say some tough guy stuff, but it's like, not saying Trump's planning it out, but I feel like, I don't think Trump really thinks about it. I think Trump speaks in a way that's formulaic, that just works, and it kind of comes out a specific way because he's been doing it so long. It's internalized. He's a salesman. He's an entertainer. He doesn't have to try in order to snare people like that.
Yeah.
I think Joe Biden, he's never been a very good speaker. In fact, most people would argue speaking has kind of been his worst thing.
Yeah.
I'll put that on the cons list, actually.
Yeah.
And even though he has an attitude, expressing that attitude might be tough for him.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anything else you want to add?
No. That was a good episode.
Yeah, I think it's 50-50 at Trump Biden right now.
Yeah. I think it's uphill for Trump.
I think it is
He
too.
needs to make some major money moves.
Or get lucky.
Yeah, get lucky too.
Unfortunately, even if he made major money moves, it might not be enough because of everything going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what would do it? Do you know what would guarantee his win?
What?
If he... Someone needs to tell him to do this, because I feel like if he gets desperate enough, he would actually do this if he thought it would make him win.
What?
Go out with an executive order and say, I'm legalizing weed. Could you imagine if... But here's how he has to do it in order for him to win. He has to do an executive order to decriminalize it immediately and set up legislation to get it legalized, but only after he gets elected in a second term.
Yeah.
And I think that's
That would work.
I think that's an issue that Trump doesn't really care enough about, where he would, if someone convinced him that it would be an auto win, he'd be like down.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Because he mostly hasn't talked about that stuff. But
Yeah.
maybe I'll tweet at the real Donald Trump. Give him the blueprint to victory.
Give her a try. Alright.
Alright.
Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next week. Listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, all your favorite platforms, and
All of them.
YouTube soon.
And YouTube.
Yeah, thanks, guys.